if I'm going to build a robot as a service, as a company, what point do I even start to make back the capital cost of the production of that thing?
1, 2, 3.
Coming up, we're talking to the CEO and founder of Carbon Robotics, Paul Mikesell, on their recent $70 million raise. The Modern Acre is the podcast for builders in ag who think differently. If you'd like to dig deeper with the Modern Acre, check out our membership community, the Modern Acre Co-op. The Modern Acre podcast is presented by Myland. Tim, I am super excited to have Myland back as a sponsor of the podcast. They sponsored the podcast about a year or so ago. Really happy to have them be a part of the program and support. Myland is a soil health company that Tim has a really unique approach. Their focus is on producing microalgae on farm.
Yeah, they have a really cool decentralized model offering their product as a service, which I think is really unique in the space. They've been around for over 10 years now, which is crazy how much time went into getting the product dialed in as they started to commercialize. They've seen really rapid growth the past couple seasons, just got organic certified for their product as well. So it's been cool to see them grow and excited to have them back as a sponsor for the podcast.
If you haven't heard of Myland, be sure to check out their website for more information. We'll link it in the show notes. All right, Tim, before we get into this conversation, this is our first pod of the year. We did our Acre Awards, but I think we have to rip the Band-Aid here, and we have to debrief our book challenge. I challenged you last year in 2023. I think I read 14 books. I think you read like a Big Nothing Burger or something. And I challenge you, you got to be a better version of yourself. You got to read books, Tim. We got to get you back in the game. And so for some odd reason, I decided to really handicap myself because I'm just this voracious reader of 14 books and so impressive. And so I gave you a 10 book handicap, meaning if I read 20 books, you read 10 books, we were even, we were tied. And that was my goal was 20, your goal was 10, and we're going to see where things fell. I don't know why I did that. You're just as capable as me to read.
Same amount of time.
Same amount of time, same amount of children. Needless to say, for our 2025 book challenge, there will be no handicap, but I think it's time we ultimately reveal. Tim, how many books did you read in 2024?
I hit my quota. I landed on 10 books. I was on a roll to start the year. And then when Hunter, our second daughter, was born in October, things went off the rails. I attempted to read a book the past couple months of the year and I still haven't finished it. So I'm on 10 and a half books right now.
Very nice. All right. Well, I'm so proud of you and I feel like so responsible for this. Like I have single-handedly made you into a reader. I know your wife reads a lot too, so I'm sure she helped as well.
She did, yeah. I think your wife Ruth got her into it. She was kind of similar to me where she had read one book, and then this year I think she read close to 20, so she's going through books like crazy now. So it just kind of ramps up once you get into it.
Totally. All right, Tim, the amount of books I read, do you want to guess?
I'm going to guess 14.
10.
So I beat you by 10.
Yeah, so you beat me by 10, but we actually tied without the handicap. But congratulations, you are the winner by substantial margin.
Thank you, Ty. Thank you. So what's the goal this year, Ty?
Okay, so I think the goal for me is 20. I think I can hit it, and I'm off to a great start. And we're just going to have a straight up competition. So my goal is 20. So I think your goal needs to be 20, and we'll let things fall where they may.
Just heads up, no handicap. Interesting.
No handicap. Yeah.
Quick.
But I owe you for winning. What do I owe you?
We had to go back through the tape. I forget what the challenge was for.
Okay. Well, I will honor you winning in 2024. And what should 2025 be for?
I was like when we do pick a shirt of the team of your choosing kind of thing, a King shirt, Niner shirt. That's always a good tradition.
Cool. And is that what we should do for your award this year?
I think so. I'd like a shirt.
We'll do that. So you just send me the shirt you want.
And one quick technicality, Ty, since I'm halfway through a book to start the year, does that count as a 24 book or a 25 book? What are we doing here?
You can roll it into 2025.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah, so that's as much handicap as I'm going to give you. All right, well, Tim, I think on the Co-op 10, so this is our exclusive membership audio podcast. We'll dive into maybe our favorites, our least favorite this week. So if you want to hear our favorite books we read, what we'd recommend, subscribe to the Modern Acre Co-op. It helps us keep the lights on. It's the cost of like a cold brew a month. So we'd really appreciate if you want to hear what Tim and I are reading, subscribe to the Modern Acre Co-op. All right, Tim, it's time we get into this interview. Carbon Robotics just announced at the end of the year a $70 million fundraising round. I think we actually talked about it on one of our editions of the Co-op 10. And I think really exciting. They're definitely kind of coming to the top in terms of success, fundraising, notoriety in the laser weeding space. And we get to talk to Paul about his story, the founding story, why their product has been successful and kind of where they're going from here and the challenges they need to overcome to get there. So it was a really, really interesting conversation with Paul.
Yeah, it's a super interesting space in agrobotics. FIRA happened a couple months back, and interesting, like Carbon is at all these shows. They've been one of the more successful in the pack, so it's cool to talk to Paul about the story and how they're looking to differentiate and grow the money and use this $70 million fundraise capital. It's a great conversation, so let's jump in with what's top of mind for Paul.
Top of mind for me. So, we just raised a brand new $70 million round led by bond capital with follow-ons from all of our existing investors, including NVIDIA, which maybe people know of. They make all the GPUs for all the deep learning computer vision business. And we're very excited about that. I feel like Silicon Valley venture could do a lot of good in agriculture. And I feel like that bridge has not been crossed as much as it should be. And I hope we're helping to set an example of how to do that. So I'm excited. I'm psyched for this new investment. I'm excited for our new board members. I'm excited to continue our innovation in building machines to help farmers. And I just really love our industry.
Carbon is a really fascinating company right now. The market is quite interesting. There's I think a lot of headwinds, a lot of tailwinds, and it'll be exciting to see where you guys go. But let's take a step back. I would love to learn a little bit more about you and your story, Paul. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. What got you involved in agriculture?
Well, Carbon Robotics, we make this thing called the laser weeder, and laser weeder is a couple of different important components. The most important one, of course, is the AI system that finds the weeds and does all the targeting. And that is my background. My background is deep tech, computer science. I have a computer science degree from the University of Washington. I had done a lot of deep learning work, a lot of AI systems work along the way through the traditional, Silicon Valley tech world. I was at Uber for quite some time working on all of their AI systems across the country through 5 major sites and all kinds of projects and stuff. And so, how did I get into agriculture? I'll tell you that honestly, it started with I sold an airplane to a farmer and started talking to that farmer about what was going on in the field. And it was one of these really serendipitous conversations between two people who had completely different backgrounds, but the interest intersected around this world of robotics and automation. And what I learned in those early conversations was that there's a lot of stuff going on the farm that could be addressed better with automation, and the enabling technologies of AI could be applied to those things. And so that's how my background I could see it starting to apply into agriculture. And going deeper into my background, I've started couple of companies. I've been at several early stage companies, have a good track record, several IPOs, companies I started, companies I was early at. And, an IPO is a situation where you built a company to the point that you basically take public investment money and you wind up on the stock exchange, right? And so having been through that transition several times before, I've experienced a lot. I know how to build companies. I know how to hire teams. I know how to sell products and tell a story. And so trying to bring that into agriculture was definitely challenging. It was new. It was different. It was basically living on these farms for quite some time. Carbon robotics, historically, we don't talk about things until we're ready to release them. And so what that means is you didn't really hear from us during those first 3 years because we were just straight up in product development. So we didn't talk about what we were doing. We didn't show pictures of our, half-built things. We didn't try to hype ourselves up externally in any way until we actually had something to build and sell to farmers that we thought was going to be helpful. And so what that meant is by the time we came out, we had fully formed products, ready to go. I think that was maybe a little different than what some people would traditionally do or maybe just naturally do, but it's kind of our style. It works really well. So pretty proud of the company, proud of Carbon Robotics, proud of the laser weeder. And I feel like I've made this transition from tech only to understanding a lot more about agriculture and farming, and I've gotten to know a lot of really great farmers.
What a super cool story. I don't think we've heard that founding story before of sell something to a farmer and have a conversation about challenges that they're facing. Like, maybe I'll just start a business around this. Like, maybe just talk to us about where you at. You obviously had a successful career, like going through IPOs. Like what made you want to get back into the arena and roll up your sleeves and start another company?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I always do. That's just what I've done my entire career. Because I like to build things, and I think people who like to build things have a hard time doing anything else, And so, I mean, I've tried the idea about maybe I'll just retire and not do anything, and I'm pretty soon I'm building something and trying to hire people to help me work on it and whatever, and raising money. So it's kind of a natural tendency, and I think people who like to build things will build things regardless, no matter what. And so I feel pretty fortunate, to have discovered something that I could be really excited about and really passionate about, and do something that was new, right? I think the trap that some people fall into through their career is they build the same thing over and over again. And that means you're just sort of refining your ideas from 20 years ago. And I really love the way that we do things in here and the way that you can do things in agriculture, where you can keep reinventing and building new stuff all the time. And that's important,
Paul, what's been the thing that's changed the most since your initial idea? I know you guys have iterated on business model, and I know the technology has changed and iterated and gotten more sophisticated and less expensive over time, which has been really, really positive. In your mind, what's been the biggest change since that initial idea?
The thing that changed the most in the product was that we originally were going to make a completely autonomous laser weeder. So the original one was a self-driving, autonomous, it steered itself, it drove around the field by itself. And we took a step back from that and decided to really focus on just the laser weeder for a bunch of different reasons. But the primary one was the farms and farming was just not ready for autonomy. And I think that that's kind of borne itself out in the lack of autonomous tractors generally, right? When you go out there, you don't see a lot of autonomous tractors. So the laser weeder, I think, focusing on laser weeder and then making it be part of fitting into the environment, I think was part of the reason why we were able to make this transition from early stage product development to something that was pretty rapidly adopted. And it was because we just focused on, laser weeding is what is important here. The autonomous part was interesting and fun, but turned out not to be the thing that really mattered. So that was a big change for us. The company has grown incredibly. You mentioned earlier, before we started recording, that you had spoken with John May early on. John May was employee number 1 at this company. And he's still here. He's still doing amazing stuff. He's our vice president of product. Watching him grow and some of the other early folks, watching them grow into their careers and skill sets, that's a big change for the company, but it's also one of my favorite things to see is how much somebody like that can, blossom into their capabilities through these kinds of opportunities. And so John May's a rock star. Everybody knows John May, loves him, except for the people who are lazy or bad at their jobs, and then they get let go. So John May is kind of how will I call it, the culture carrier of the company in a lot of ways, right? Like we do a lot of work. We work very, very hard. And it's important that everybody's pulling their weight. And a lot of that comes from sort of the John May style ethos of getting things done.
Paul, would love to dig into kind of like commercialization and how adoption is going. Like you're introducing something that's new and novel to the marketplace. Like typically like tractors equipment runs through like dealer network and you're bringing something to the farm that has never existed before. And so you're having to communicate like return on investment for growers. And it's not a one-for-one comparison when they're kind of making these considerations. Maybe just talk to us about how the commercialization is going.
We do go and sit down with growers a lot and talk about, we have this thing we call the cost calculator, the ROI calculator. And we talk ROI from the very beginning. And the real number is, okay, as a farmer, if I buy a laser weeder, how long until the laser weeder pays for itself, right? So if I take that capital outlay and then I take the amount of money I'm saving every year from using laser weeder, how long does it take to pay for the laser weeder? And we want that number to always be less than 3 years. So 1 to 3 years is a typical good area for where that ROI would land. So if you're a farmer, you buy a laser weeder, it pay for itself in 3 years. And so we do have to do those kinds of deep discussions with farmers all the time. And I think we got pretty good at it, and we have more evidence about why that is now. So it's certainly easier now than it was before. But it is a conversation we have to have directly because there's certain parts of value selling, right? This is generally considered value selling, where you really have to understand your customer's business in a way to sort of show at least why you think this is good for them. And the dealers are not really versed in used to that kind of selling. You know, when you look at, look at Fendt. How does Fendt sell tractors? I hope I'm not going to throw anybody in Fendt under the bus here, but their basic message is it's like a John Deere, only it's a lot better on fuel economy, right? So that's a much different way to sell something than say, hey, I'm going to tell you about this brand new thing, which is laser weeding to replace other processes on your farms. So we feel like we really need to own that conversation. That's part of it. And I really love having the direct conversation and contact with our customers because we learn something new all the time. And any amount of new product development is going to come out of those conversations. And when you go through a dealer, you lose that direct contact. And then the other thing that's kind of interesting is that in a lot of these, business experts in hardware equipment sales in other industries will try to steer you towards dealer networks as a sort of channel sales strategy. I've found, at least in agriculture, that doesn't even work that well because there's not a lot of national dealer networks, right? Your local John Deere dealer is not owned by John Deere, and it's not even run by anybody who's employed by John Deere. It's some guy's tractor shop repair situation that then he was able to convert into an official Deere dealer. So you don't really have a national dealership chain, and it's not really a channel. And so that was an education, I think, more for our investors than it was maybe for me. But that's a little bit different. So that's kind of why we don't really do a lot. We don't do really anything for laser weeders through dealerships, but we do a lot of work through dealerships for things like tractors and what tractor to buy, which ones work best, and what's the features and lifting requirements and all that kind of stuff. Just specifically for the tractor that laser weeder is pulled by.
Paul, how is the product doing? How are you? I know you guys, this is ag, and we talk about ag tech all the time about how you get like one shot on goal a year. It's not constant iteration. You have to go with the growing season, the growing cycle. How has the product been developing and advancing? And as you think more about the improvements in AI, how is that affecting product performance?
There are more than 100 laser weeders. We shipped number 100 sometime about 2 quarters ago, and we've continued shipping laser weeder. Every one of those machines that we've shipped is still running. All 100 and whatever of those things is out there running. We have expanded into outside of just, we started with West Coast agriculture in the United States, Washington, California. Now we're all throughout the United States. I think we're in 17 states at this point. We've shipped a lot of stuff into Europe now. I'm talking about Germany, Netherlands, Denmark, France, Spain, Italy, UK. I'm sure I'm forgetting some stuff, but and then also Australia. We have a lot of machines going on in Australia. So it's really a global sales strategy at this point, which kind of helps with some of the stuff you were hitting on before, that it's a one-time one sale per year kind of situation. Because we're global, we hit the northern latitudes and the southern latitudes. We hit different crops that come on at different times. And that has helped to smooth out our revenue quite a bit as well. And it's also taught us a lot about different farming practices around the world and given us some ideas for future product direction and things like that as well. Laser Weeder is continually getting better from an AI perspective. The software, we upload new software to the Laser Weeders all the time. That includes things like software controls, algorithms that make things just generally run faster or more consistently, software upgrades to things like the UI and the interface that the farmer has with the laser weeder. And then, of course, the AI itself, which is crop recognition, getting better at crop recognition, more crop types, more varieties, that kind of thing. So because Laser Weeder is really a base platform that we can continually upgrade the software on, that means that everybody's Laser Weeder is always getting better. And that's an important part of, being able to get into these new crops all the time and continue to do great work across a broad variety of crops. So we have over 100 different crops that we can do now. If we run into a new crop that we haven't seen before, we can put a new computer vision model on that machine in 24 to 48 hours and get a brand new crop up and running. So we've gotten really good at that.
Paul, would love to dig into kind of the competitive landscape. There's a number of different companies kind of approaching robotic laser weeding. There's, Stout and Verdant and a handful of companies in the market. Like, how's that been in terms of like differentiating the product and kind of selling growers, if a grower's considering two options, like what's the kind of pitch towards carbon?
There's a lot of work around things like lettuce where it's less dense planting, where Carbon Robotics Laser Weeder works well in conjunction with something else. So you mentioned Stout, Carbon Robotics Laser Weeder with a Stout, for example, is a reasonable way to go in something like lettuce that doesn't have the same density of maybe like spinach or carrots or something like that. And we try to work with farmers about whatever tools work best for them. And so there are certainly scenarios where using a smart cultivator like that plus a laser weeder is the best way to go. And we're always happy to work with farmers towards whatever the right tools are. In high density stuff, the laser weeder is really the only way to go because anything else you do is going to tear up your crops and damage a bunch of the crops and stuff. And so on the competitive side, for most of the time, what laser weeder is being compared to is labor and herbicides. It's not usually, compared to something like a smart cultivator. And what it is, we're happy to work with these cultivators, and because the thing that laser weeder does in that scenario is it gets right around that crop. We can get right up against the crop and kill all the weeds. So, and competitively, just more broadly, I mean, there is no other laser weeder you can go buy. And it's interesting to see how many people, continually say they think they might want to do a laser weeder. It's a very challenging project. It took a long time to get it right. I do want to make sure that we have the best product in the market for everybody. And I'm really proud of what we built. And the new markets we're going into across the world are always teaching me new things. And so we're always figuring out ways to make it better. But I'm really proud of it.
Earlier this year, you mentioned at the top, raised $70 million, your next round. Super exciting news, especially in a macro environment, which has been challenging for ag tech in particular. Talk to us about that round, $70 million, lots of money. Like, what are your plans with that? What does deployment of that capital look like?
We are very focused on continuing manufacturing, optimizing manufacturing so that we can continue optimizing price to the farmers, and performance and quality and all those things. So a chunk of that money is going into building our own manufacturing line and really building a lot more efficiency into the way that we do manufacturing. So we're starting to do a lot more of that work ourselves, and we're going to wind up taking over all of it. We had been using a contract manufacturer that kind of got us to where we are, but it's time for us to do this ourselves. So we have a big chunk of space in Richland, Washington, which is eastern Washington. Washington kind of looks like California in some ways, in that we have, the cities on the coast and then a mountain range, and then kind of all the stuff on the eastern side. I realize the mountain range sort of between Salinas and Central Valley is not really that much of a range, but in Washington, it's a giant Cascade Range. And on the eastern side is where all the agriculture stuff is. And so we have a facility there where we're starting to do a lot of our manufacturing. So that's a big change. We do have some new products that are coming out in 2025, the first of which I think will be announced in March. So other agriculture, other AI robotic stuff, different entirely from laser weeder, something that we're incredibly proud of. We're doing pilots of this product today. So there will be some new product development. There's some of that money is going to product development. There will be some new push to talk about that product in March timeframe. I'm really proud of it and excited by it. And then just continued expansion on our business, including, of course, laser weeder all around the world. So putting sales and support and making sure we have supply chains globally is a lot of what that money is going towards. So it's manufacturing and manufacturing optimization. It's new product development and then continued expansion for laser weeder around the world.
Paul, you've been successful in your business career, gone through the IPO process, got companies to that finish line. Kind of what is the outcome for Carbon? Like, what are you pointing to? Like, obviously with new administration coming on, like the activity for M&A might be a little bit easier. Like is Deere like potential with Deere or like an OEM, or are you looking for?
Look, for me, my goal, we're just very focused on a continued independent path for Carbon Robotics. We build this business to be a standalone business, continue to build good products for farmers. And so we will probably, in some amount of time, I'm not going to really project in terms of years, but have an IPO and maintain ourselves as an independent publicly traded company. There's just so much potential here in the new product development that we have, the new product we're launching and some of the other things coming behind that. I think, Carbon is what we are at our core is really an AI robotics company. So there's a lot more we can be doing for farmers here. It's not just about laser weeder. So I think in long term, we will have a much larger product line that is all using this kind of skill set that we have, which is robotics and AI systems to build really great machines. But there's no sort of near-term acquisition we're eyeing or thinking about, at all. Really, I know how to build fast-growing, sustainable businesses that continue to build really cool products, and that's what we're doing. This is not a like company that's going to build laser weeder and then sell out. We're really much more about where are we trying to get to long term, and it would be a real shame to just get folded into the existing three potential maybe M&A producers in the space. I think there's a lot more to be done.
I love that mindset. Paul, as we kind of wrap up this section, what have you learned the most through this process, whether it's on the product side or grower customers? What comes to mind?
I have really enjoyed getting to learn and understand farmers and farming. I have a pretty blue collar background. On my growing up, I used to load trailers for UPS, and I worked at every pizza place in town, washing dishes and whatever. And so I really appreciate people who know how to do good, hard work and just sort of make stuff happen. I've gotten to really know a lot of farmers and see their dedication to making things happen and just hard work. But I was never really that exposed to just farming generally. And so now I'm pretty deep in it. And I just learned a lot about where our food comes from and how hard it can be to grow that food. And, you touched a little bit before on the new administration. I would love to see this Make America Healthy Again movement really start to kick in a way that gives farmers more tools, more capabilities, more appreciation for the good things that they are doing to bring good food to our grocery stores. And, we don't need to be spraying chemicals all over everything to keep the weeds at bay. Particularly not where in the long term, it hurts your nutrient content and quality of your produce. But who suffers the most? It's really the farmers for that long-term lifetime of exposure to these things. So we don't need to be doing it that way. I think one of your sponsors is Corteva. I hope that isn't going to upset them too much. But I love the idea of being able to grow food without spraying pesticides all over the place. So that's a big thing that I've learned is just how much of that there is and the need for other solutions.
One more quick one, Paul. In talking about kind of offering as a service, like as a farmer, we often like contract out custom transplanting or harvest. Like, have you seen anybody like buying these and offering as a service to their local communities? And like,
yeah, a couple people doing that. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I would not say that's the most common because usually our products are bought by large farms who want to deploy it immediately to their farm to get all that value for themselves. But there are some people who will do contract jobs with laser weeders. Sure.
All right, want to switch gears here, Paul, and zoom out, talk about the industry at large. What's your ag hot take?
My ag hot take is that all of the VCs that show up into agriculture, they always try to push their portfolio companies to do this thing where it's robots as a service. And I think that is a complete failure. I think it's a terrible business model, particularly in agriculture. I think it's bad for the farmers. I think it's bad for the companies. And I wish VCs would stop trying to apply a pattern match from software as a service into robots as a service. And I know a lot of people will disagree with me on that, but as far as I can tell, the robots as a service in agriculture does not work very well. Why doesn't it work very well? Part of it is because if I'm going to build a robot as a service, as a company, what point do I even start to make back the capital costs of the production of that thing? I have to price it in a way where I capture most of that value as a company, which means the farmer is now not getting most of that value, right? So there's this push about the capital cost of that thing, which is not advantageous either to the farmer or the company. So I think robots as a service is a busted model, and I don't like it.
yeah, I think I tend to agree with you. I go back and forth on this one. I think, yeah, from the company standpoint, like you have to hire people in every market and maintain and manage, and the logistics are very complex because everyone inevitably wants something at the same time. So it just creates a lot of bottlenecks. I think for growers, it's kind of mixed. Yeah, you could potentially, like if you have the land base to support it, like justify getting your own, but sometimes being able to buy something on a per acre basis and not have to store it, maintain it, like that makes sense too. So definitely see your point there.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a grower who's got a short growing cycle, I would much rather see them partner with somebody who bought a laser weeder in a different area, a different geography that's out of cycle with them, and then rent that instead of doing some as a service thing from us or whatever. Because those as a service business models, man, it's just like the way company have to price them is crazy, and it's like you said, you got to have staff everywhere or whatever. I don't get a Section 179 deduction on my production of laser weeders. The farmer can, right? The advanced depreciation stuff. So there's a lot of the whole ag sector is built around buying equipment, right? And I think that I think we've done a good job of leaning into that, and I would encourage other companies and founders to do the same.
Paul, as we wrap up here, like what other areas of ag are you interested in? Obviously, you're laser focused, no pun intended, on what you're doing. What other areas are you interested by, curious about?
Well, really, I mean, we have there are several things we're working on, so I have to be a little careful about what I say. But I will say, everything from what goes into the ground to how you sell it at the end of the value chain is something we're looking at. We're being asked to do stuff. We're discovering new things all the time. I think agriculture has had a lack of investment in it from, like I mentioned before, from Silicon Valley. And so the opportunities are everywhere. And every farmer I've ever met has been so open with us and willing to show us how things are running and give us time and exposure to things and talk with us about what they see. So, I'm interested in basically just about everything, but I don't want to telegraph too much because we do have some announcements coming out later this year. So, and hopefully, we can talk again and we can talk about some of those things.
Yeah, we'll definitely have you back on. Excited to follow those announcements in 2025. Paul, this has been a ton of fun. As we wrap up, how can our listeners get in touch and connect with you and Carbon Robotics?
Yeah, carbonrobotics.com. We have a bunch of videos on there. And then, of course, we have a YouTube and we have an Instagram and a TikTok and all those other things. We're pretty active on LinkedIn as well. And then if you ever see us at a show, please come and stop by and say hello. We will, of course, be at the World Egg Expo in Tulare this year. I think this will be our 4th year running going to that show. We'll be at Fruit Logistica in Berlin in February, as well as several other shows later in the year. I'm just off the top of my head thinking about the stuff that's upcoming shortly. Please come by and say hello at any of those shows.
So, Ty, what do you think?
It's great to talk to a founder CEO like right off the news of the fundraising. There, it's obviously a high. There's a lot of excitement, about where they're going. I think it was really interesting hearing, some of the product iterations and how they were originally autonomous, and then they really focused. Let's scrap this whole autonomous thing. That's a distraction, and let's focus on the laser weeding. And I think we've seen a number of startups kind of do something similar, right? Is kind of like narrow the scope, focus on one thing that they can accomplish and do really well. And so that was obviously really successful for Carbon.
Hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. We'll be back next week with another new episode.